Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And Tyson, we're coming off of week 4 in the NFL, and you get those early upsets and you get those interesting games early on, and we're kind of starting to figure out a little bit more about who teams are.
Yeah, we got a whole month under our belt. We got like 4 whole data points to pull from, which is twice as many as we had 2 weeks ago, and we were on here making proclamations as if they were totally true. So I'm glad to have the 4 weeks. I'm a little bit trying to hold my horses with crowning some of these teams, though.
And we'll get into that. We got a lot to cover for you, but first we got to get into our opening segment.
Just say it.
And Tyson, for me, it's got to be a Mike McDaniel fraud alert right now. I mean, what in the world? This has been disgusting to watch this Miami Dolphins offense. And I want to sit here and say I've been banging my hand on the table saying you guys got to give Tua Tagovailoa some respect. And all I heard was, oh, he's average. He's a system quarterback. Apparently there is no system because the offense for the Miami Dolphins is horrendous. I mean, sure, Tyler Huntley comes in off the street. But you can't game plan if you're Mike McDaniel how to get Tyreek Hill the ball in space. I mean, we've seen the bubble screen. We've seen slant routes where he takes it for 80. How is that not happening right now? Skylar Thompson, who's been in the system, looked horrendous. And I don't think he's a very good quarterback. But the fact that this is the way the offense has looked is a joke. I mean, Tyson, they're 31st right now in the NFL, tied for last, with 3 other teams for EPA per play, negative 0.22. They're tied with Deshaun Watson, who we think is a shell of himself. The Tennessee Titans, who Will Levis was turning the rock over, and then we just saw the ridiculous display from Mason Rudolph with the offense there. Barely better than the Carolina Panthers, who had Bryce Young the first 2 weeks, and Andy Dalton, a little bit better. And I mean, this is a complete disaster. And I don't want to be like making bold statements that he is a fraud. I'm just putting them on fraud alert because what I've seen through these 4 weeks, even when they had Tua, has been enough to raise my alarm bells. Like, I don't know if everything's been figured out in this system. I don't know if he's just not as good as we thought. I don't know if he was freaking boosted up by Tua Tagovailoa. Like, all the things are on the table right now because it is a dumpster fire in Miami.
No, and it's like this goes along with what my range is going to be. So I'll just hop into it too. Like, we got to stop with just making these coaches like this is the next guy, right? After 1 year or 2 years of his tenure, Nick Sirianni is a guy we go at all the time, and it was the same thing with him. This guy is awesome, and then the team is like 2-9 or whatever in his last 11 games, and now we have Mike McDaniel, who's the preeminent offensive mind in the NFL. He's past Shanahan, he's past McVay. Look at how fast this team is. Well, Brad, LaFleur can coach with a backup quarterback and win games. Kevin O'Connell can pick somebody up off the street and win football games. Sean McVay grabbed Baker Mayfield, had him there for 24 hours and won a football game. I know that the Dolphins' offense is based off timing, and I know that Tua is elite and might be the best in the NFL at hitting those timing routes. He's not playing. You knew that this was a possibility when you brought him back, for this season, when you gave him all that money, I should say, that, like, hey, we might need to have a little bit of a backup plan. There is no break glass in case of emergency here in Miami, and there is a counterpunch for all of the coaches in the league that we know are good, that we have, like, we've seen them demonstrate over the course of seasons that they are good. You know how long it took somebody to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I think John Harbaugh can coach. I like what Jim Harbaugh is doing in San Francisco. If Andy Reid was like much maligned to start his career in Philly, and he's making the playoffs. Like, sometimes it's okay to wait on these coaches because right now, like, you're supposed to fit your system to the quarterback, play to their strengths, hide their weaknesses. They are just, hey, here's what we're going to run 2 tunnel screens to Tyreek Hill. And then we're going to try to get sacked. 34% of their plays going backwards in the middle of the third quarter. You had a week. You had a whole week with Tyler Huntley. We knew he was going to be the starter. Achane looks like he's regressed a little bit. To me, at least, it looks like maybe it's easier to hit home runs when the defense doesn't know exactly what's coming and when your head coach isn't doing you any favors. I mean, to go from he's top 5. Everyone says he's top 5 to now, I don't know. Like, this guy might not have a job in a year is a crazy place to be. And I don't know how much of it is his fault. Maybe it is a Tua thing or whatever, but it's like you don't have a counterpunch.
Well, I mean, clearly the box is getting stacked to stop them because that's the only explosive play that the Dolphins are getting. But no, I completely agree with you when it comes to these coach. I mean, I think it's the culture thing. Like we just want to come out and say, yes, no, I was right on this. Look, this guy's the first. I found this guy, right? It's the angel investing culture, right? Like, oh, I found the next Apple. I found the next Google. Look at me. And we do it with quarterbacks all the time. And it's hard for people to come off of that too. And not to get into a broader picture, but I think that's what's happening right now where anybody who's fresh and new that comes in and it works immediately, oh, they're the next greatest thing. Well, it takes some time. Like it takes a while to become Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, who gets criticized and all they do is win. So I agree. I mean, it's just a kind of a product of our culture, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, and we can't stop it though. Like we're going to sit here next year. We're going to go, man. I mean, we did it with Antonio Pierce. The guy won like 4 games as an interim, and now the whole team quit on him, and everyone's looking around going, "Huh, how'd that happen?"
Well, we'll see because I do think they had a good win against the Browns because that was an ugly, sloppy game. There was a lot of celebration on the sideline. I do think
that was.
Like I think if people quit, I don't think they would have won that game because that thing was like a seesaw. So. Tyson, let's get into some of the things that happened this past weekend.
Armchair quarterback.
And so talking about where we are about in this past month, some things are starting to crystallize. Some things are starting to get a little bit more clear. But one thing that is very slow is the MVP betting market. And if you're not if you're not a bettor, maybe this isn't necessarily for you, but this is still a conversation we want to have about who's the MVP and who's perceived as the actual most valuable player in the NFL right now. So Patrick Mahomes is the favorite to take home this award again. Josh Allen, after the loss to the Ravens, is now second. CJ Stroud third, followed by Lamar Jackson for a back-to-back campaign. Sam Darnold and the undefeated Vikings, he is fifth. Brock Purdy is sixth. Then you got Jared Goff, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Aaron Rodgers, kind of all in that ancillary spot there. So I'll just throw it to you. Like, who are you leaning towards right now? I know we spoke highly about Josh Allen last week, but where are you stand on this?
So this one is super weird because like we did speak highly about Josh Allen, and one game doesn't change things. But as far as betting markets go, it kind of does. And we saw the Bills kind of get dog walked by the Baltimore Ravens, and that's not a very good look for somebody trying to win MVP. I will say there's no way that Lamar Jackson is going to win the MVP again. This year he can't. Like they're not going to give this guy 3 of them without any sort of playoff success. I know it's not a playoff award, but Pat Mahomes sitting here at 1 at plus 230, it kind of feels a little paper tigery. Losing Rashee Rice and on top of it not putting up the numbers that people are used to when it comes to Patrick Mahomes. So Brad, that leaves me with CJ Stroud. I think the Texans got to do something special for CJ Stroud to win the award, and maybe they will. And then you got Sam Darnold sitting here at plus 1100. What do the Vikings have to do this season record-wise for Sam Darnold to realistically – like if this was the Heisman, right now it feels like he's going to get invited to New York, but he doesn't actually have a shot to win the award. Are we doing that with the MVP?
Yes, because they're undefeated and because he's looked good. I think for him to realistically be in this conversation, we're looking at a number 1 seed in the NFC. Yeah. So 14, 13 wins. Somewhere along those lines. 4,500 yards. I don't know about that because Mahomes, he was knocking on the door last year. He threw 4,100. So, but I think he's going to need 35 plus touchdowns. He's going to need the lower hit, not have as many turnovers, which, that's kind of been thrown out. Mahomes, when he won MVP in 2022, 12 interceptions. So it's not necessarily that. I mean, if you put up a ton of stats, though, I mean, Mahomes led the league in touchdown passes and yards. I think Darnold doesn't necessarily have to do that if the Vikings are the number 1 overall seed, but they're going to have to do something special. I agree with you.
Yeah, and then the one that really piques my interest, that I don't think that the voters have the guts to give this award to, but Brad, I think the MVP of the league through 4 weeks might have to be Jaden Daniels. It might have to be the rookie out there in Washington. This dude doesn't throw incompletions. Everything under 10 yards is money. The team is winning games. He just goes in and drops 42 points on Arizona. They have the narrative behind it and all of those things. I don't think he's going to win it. But we did sit here in our NFL preview show and kind of talk a little bit about Rookie of the Year and how you can't take somebody preseason at minus anything like Caleb Williams was and to look for another one of these quarterbacks. And Jaden Daniels has not only he started writing his name on that award. We won't say he stamped it yet, but I think he deserves to be higher up. Like Jalen Hurts isn't winning MVP.
No.
I don't think Dak Prescott's going to win MVP. I don't think Joe Burrow is going to win MVP. I think Jaden Daniels should move all the way up to those guys' spots here on the betting list.
That's interesting. Are the Commanders going to be good enough? That's the question that people have. They're sitting at 3-1. He's definitely going to be rookie of the year, in my opinion, the offensive side of the ball. If he stays healthy, I think that's a concern you have with Jaden Daniels. But Tyson, I'm looking at Jared Goff plus 2,000 if I'm in the betting market. And I honestly think if we're trying to project who's going to take home this award, it's going to be him. Tons of games in the Dome, tons of games where he's going to be able to put up numbers. This offense got off to a slow start. Did anybody watch Monday Night Football? Because holy smokes, it looks like Ben Johnson is in his bag. Jared Goff kind of talked about it a little bit. They've had some lulls. They've been just a little bit off. Now, 18 of 18 was perfect, right? Through a perfect game. I don't know if that's going to continue. It won't. He won't have probably the same thing going forward. But Tyson, again, this offense has gotten off to a slow start. He's 5th right now in passing yards. He only has 5 touchdowns compared to 4 picks. I think those touchdown numbers increase. I think his yardage total is going to be huge. Sam Laporta actually looked good with his sprained ankle. What happens when he gets healthy? We've always talked about Jameson Williams, what he can bring to this offense. All of a sudden, you add him. If they have St. Brown being what he was last year, combined with Jameson Williams, this is a scary, scary offense. So I think if I'm looking at somebody, I'm taking a peek at Jared Goff because I think he's going to put up gaudy numbers.
And don't pay attention to the fact that we might have, or we might be holding Jared Goff future MVP ticket.
Let's get into the New York Jets with some of their issues, Tyson, because that was just a ridiculous loss. Like if you have Super Bowl aspirations, that's not a game that you can lose at home against a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, who had -7 yards passing in the first half. The weather was bad, sure. Aaron Rodgers has played in bad weather his whole career. I do not want to hear that excuse. This is an offense that looks anemic. We love Garrett Wilson on this podcast. We've talked about how we think he's the next bright star in this league. Tyson, there's something wrong with the chemistry between him and Rodgers because all we heard this preseason was, they're basically inseparable. I mean, gosh, they're on the same page. 191 receiving yards through 4 games. That's not wide receiver 1 material. I mean, right now, Allen Lazard is the best wide receiver on the Jets, and he was a cut candidate in freaking training camp. Breece Hall looks like a shell of himself. 10 carries for 4 yards. What the hell is that about? I mean, we were texting Breece Hall he might get his job taken by Braylon Allen, the rookie. I mean, it looks like more. What is your take on this situation with the Jets?
It's kind of the same preseason take a little bit. As I didn't think that the fancy toys were as good as everybody else was kind of putting on. And we are a Garrett Wilson podcast. We do think he's good. And one of the things that I kind of always come back to is if we lined up blind resumes of everybody in the league, like in that age range, he's going to come out way lower than you think. Him, Drake London, Chris Olave, those guys are going to come out like tiers below somebody like Nico Collins, tiers below somebody like Puka Nacua. And now we're seeing rookie wide receivers like Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison burst onto the scene. And Malik Neighbors has had a better 3-week stretch than Garrett Wilson's ever put together in his entire career. So it does feel a little bit like, hey, we can keep waiting on this potential. At a certain point, the guys have been in the league for 4 years. If you're not quarterback proof, which we found out with the Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, all of those games, and you're not matchup proof, as we see Patrick Surtain be able to take you away, then you're just a really good player. And it's okay to be a really good player, but we were sold, you were sold, more so than I was, that the New York Jets were going to walk into this thing because they had such awesome players. Breece Hall is amazing, or he has been amazing. It's really hard to play in the rain when the box is stacked because they're not afraid that you throw the ball. Mike Williams, like if he comes around, great. Allen Lazard is like the guy here. Tyler Conklin. These aren't names that you're afraid of as a defensive coordinator. We know it's Aaron Rodgers. I was going to say 12, but it's 8 now. The defense is still awesome. I think that the issues are they've been visible if you've been really looking at the things. And look, Nathaniel Hackett's still calling plays. This offense looks broken, man.
I think a lot of the issues, too, stem from the offensive line. And this is an area that's been discussed by pretty much New York media across both teams. But when specifically looking at the Jets, try to revamp their offensive line by trading for Morgan Moses, by signing Tyron Smith, who the Cowboys, let's just say, let out of the building for a reason. And it's not been pretty. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is on on pace to be sacked the most times, I believe, since 2018. This is a 40-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles tear. Now, is that issues because receivers can't get separation? The first read is taken away. The defense is masking a lot of what they're doing. Rodgers still trying to catch up to speed. I think it's a combination of the whole thing. It's just this was sold, and I bought into it as, oh, with Rodgers here now, all the offensive issues are solved. The defense is going to be great. We're looking at a team that can compete for a Super Bowl. That's not what we have with the Jets right now. There is a real chance that they go into London when they play the Vikings this weekend in a unproven terrain, kind of a weird situation. They got to figure that out, and they're sitting there, Tyson, at 2-3 because they lost a game to the Denver Broncos at home in a game that they were in control of the entire time and blew it at the end. That does not scream contender to me.
No, and they might find themselves looking up quite a bit if the Bills can take care of business against the Texans this week. I mean, week 5 is too early to say, hey, man, you're in danger, but we're getting pretty close to pushing that button here with the Jets.
Well, one thing that they could do here, Tyson, that's coming out of this weekend that could improve the New York Jets is going and trading for Davante Adams, whose trade rumors are running rampant right now. He missed week 4 in their win against the Browns, I might point out, with a hamstring injury, apparently popped up on Thursday. But this also stems from head coach Antonio Pierce stating that guys are making business decisions. We're going to make business decisions of our own, coming off their week 3 embarrassing loss against the Carolina Panthers. Now, was that a veiled shot at Davante? Is the hamstring thing the business decision from the players? So the organization's going to make the business decision? Not sure, but he goes on up and downs with Kay Adams this morning. Apparently, Antonio Pierce liked an Instagram post from Sports Illustrated account that said the Raiders are interested and will take a package that they deem acceptable to move Davante Adams out of town. Now, when asked about it, Adams said he hasn't spoken to Antonio Pierce. They're not communication. It's the head coach. It's your star wide receiver. So this continues to be messy. This continues to be a classic Raiders story. And now everybody's talking about who's going to trade for Davante Adams. Is it the Chiefs? Is it the Jets? Is it another wide receiver needy team? So what do you make of this entire situation?
Well, for one, is that Trey Tucker looks pretty good. And I think that helps a lot of this, is that the Raiders are going, hey, we got a guy. He's not Davante Adams, and he might never become a superstar, but Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker might be good enough to help to win you football games. And we think the Browns are pretty bad here on this podcast, but a win is a win. The other part is there's a lot of teams right now that are looking around. We talked ad nauseum. Man, there's so many good wide receivers in the NFL right now. And now the Chiefs are down a bunch. I don't think the Raiders are going to trade in division. Don't get ahead of yourselves. But there are contender teams that need wide receiver, the Jets being one. We know the obvious connection here with Aaron Rodgers. The Saints need a wide receiver, and we know how much he loves Derek Carr. The Saints won't do it. They can't afford it. So kind of everything comes back to the New York Jets with this. But it is very interesting. You trade for a wide receiver, pay him all this money, and then didn't have a plan necessarily on how to execute or how to be good. By the time that the Raiders are ready to compete, which is a sentence that we say every year and just kind of put it a year farther down the line, Davante Adams is cooked, right? So get what you can while you can. I think that he's looked fine this season, or he's looked good. Fine is disrespectful to the level of player that he is, but there are teams out there in the NFL right now that would send you a second and some change for a Davante Adams type, and that's if you can get it, you got it.
I completely agree. Raiders should look to trade Davante Adams. They're not trading him to the Chiefs. If I'm wrong on this, you can clip it. But Tom Telesco is not freaking trading his best wide receiver and Davante Adams to the Chiefs. Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, then he'll just sign with the Chiefs. But Tom Telesco's been in this freaking division. He doesn't like getting his ass kicked by the Chiefs. He's going to hand over a wide receiver on a silver platter to a wide receiver needy team than the Chiefs. No way. That's not going to happen. I know it's not fantasy football. All these guys going on TV, it's the Chiefs could make a play for Adams. That's it. Well, sure, they'd love to have.
The only way that could happen is if the Raiders internally feel that they can get a pick from the Chiefs that is going to make them good enough to compete with the Chiefs later. So you have to measure, so this is going to be the 64th pick in the second round in 2026. Is that worth us letting them hang 2 more banners? And the answer to that is unequivocally no. It's going to stand out.
if I'm the Raiders, I try to fleece the Jets. Jobs are on the line there. I mean, Joe Douglas is sweating. Robert Saleh is sweating. Just frame it as this guy's the answer to your prayers. Send over Davante Adams. Aaron Rodgers will be happy. Then you and Robert Saleh don't have to worry about the infighting, and everybody's fine. Fleece the Jets. They're in trouble. All right, Tyson, let's look ahead. We got some fun stuff coming up. This weekend, though, we're trying to go through this, and it's not necessarily the best matchups on the board. But, it's the NFL. We're always going to get some stuff. But let's preview two of our favorites.
Marquee matchups.
Marquee matchups. Let's start with the first one, Bills at Texans. And I think this is an interesting football game because the Bills are coming off like an ass kicking against the Ravens. Texans, they're everybody's darling. They should have lost against the Jags. The Jags are just inept, but that would have been a bad loss if you're the Texans. But they're at home again, which they play better at home. A Bills team that I think, the Ravens just put on tape on how to beat them. And it's not just running the football down their throat because the Texans don't have a Derrick Henry type, but it's attacking the middle of the field. It's attacking the weaknesses because of the injuries that they have. And plus the Bills are now without Von Miller for 4 games after he was suspended for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. So there's a pass rusher that's taken off the field for them. How do you see this one? Are the Bills are they fool's gold? Are the Texans not as good as we thought? What's your breakdown here?
I think neither. I think this is the first game of the year, Brad, where I can hit it with a playoff preview because that's what I think this is. I think these two teams are going to see each other later in the year with a lot more on the line than right now. Does that mean that they're not going to want to put things on tape? No. I think that both of these teams want to win this football game. I think C.J. Stroud wants to beat Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen wants to remind the kid maybe, hey, man, I had to pay my dues. I had to lose to a lot of guys for a long time too. Sean McDermott off a loss, like we know what we're going to get from the Bills. They're going to be fired up. They're going to be ready to roll. They need to figure out this target allocation, and it's something that we've been talking about week over week. The first drive is Dalton Kincaid, and it's Dalton Kincaid, it's Dalton Kincaid, it's Dalton Kincaid, and then as the game goes on, Josh Allen looks for Khalil Shakir and somebody else to try to kind of fill that role. Now Davante Adams looking for a new team. Buffalo would be cool, but I do think that is one of the bigger issues right now. Henry and the Bills is that they don't their break glass in case of emergency guy is probably Khalil Shakir, and I think that's fine. But it doesn't feel like that's the way that they want to play still. I still think that Josh Allen is hunting some of those big plays, and occasionally he's able to hit them. They don't have the guy that's risen to the occasion yet to say, I'm going to be the guy that you throw the football to who need to win a football game. The Houston Texans don't have that problem. They got at least 2 of those guys, and they probably have 3. Nico Collins is leading the league in receiving yards right now by like 1 billion. I don't even think he's like 120 up on everybody else. It's not that close. But over the middle of the field, that's Diggs' area. That's going to be your take Dell over the top, and it's going to be layering throws. I think that the Texans have a chance to hunt some chunk plays this weekend, which is a double-edged sword for them because we've seen C.J. Stroud fall in love with that 25-yard over the middle of the field throw or looking at the sideline and ignoring maybe Dalton Schultz open with 6-7 yards away from the quarterback. If he can take those throws, I think the Texans win this game. I do think, Brad, as weird as it is to say, that the Bills might need this one a little more. And I thought they were the best team in the league 2 weeks ago. But to lose to 2 straight playoff contenders is a tough pill to swallow when you're trying to find a new identity.
Well, they also might need this one the most because this is a Stephon Diggs revenge game from both angles. I mean, I'm sure the Bills got a little sick of Stephon Diggs in the locker room. I'm sure they want to come out and show, hey, you think you're going to the Texans and it's going to be a free, fun ride. Let's come in here and smash your dreams, right? On the other side, Stephon Diggs wants to stick it to the Bills. I mean, come on. We know the type of guy he is and how he wants to perform in this type of game. I'm intrigued by this, Tyson, because the Buffalo Bills, based on EPA per play, have the best offense in the league, and at times it's really looked like it. Everybody's going to be like, whoa, when they played the Ravens. Again, this is a week-to-week football league. This is a week-to-week basis and matchup, and at a certain point, that thing just snowballed for the Bills, and it got out of control. And, sometimes you just kind of chalk that up to, hey, this is the NFL. We got to move on. So I throw that out.
Some teams in some sports just have guys that have your number. Derrick Henry owns the Buffalo Bills no matter what jersey he's got on his back. It's not their fault.
Now, I'm curious about the Texans because, metrically, they're pretty good on defense. I mean, they're 13th in EPA per play, are good at stopping the run, can stop the pass. So I think if like a Derek Stingley takes out one of the options, let's say Khalil Shakir, is Josh Allen forced to go to Keon Coleman, who I actually thought had a little bit of a breakout against the Ravens in some spots, dropped that big pass, but had some good back shoulder throws, a little escape patch on the sideline. This to me is a big matchup. I'm looking forward to this one. I think this is the best game of the weekend.
I don't even think it's close, brother. I think this is got to be it.
Well, speaking of the Ravens, they got to go on the road to face the Cincinnati Bengals, who got their first win of the season by beating the Carolina Panthers. Now, the concern here for the Bengals is their defense looks like a shell of itself. I mean, they are giving up chunk plays, points, and telling the offense, hey, can you bail us out? Which they were able to do against the Carolina Panthers. They weren't able to do in the first 3 games of the year. Now, that Chiefs game, the defense actually performed pretty well for the Bengals. So I think they got to refine that form. Now, maybe that comes here against the Ravens offense who wants to run the football, and they do have some limitations in the passing game. But I think it's always scary when you kind of look at the Bengals in this current state and say, man, are they going to be able to hold up on the back end? Now, I think the good thing here, if you're the Bengals, is you are playing at home. They got a good bump when they're playing the Chiefs. Playing a divisional opponent in the Baltimore Ravens, that's a positive to me. I think with T. Higgins back, this offense looks much more explosive. We talked about Yoshi Voss on the outside. Mike Gesicki continues to be a target at the tight end position. But it's hard for me to just come out here and say I think the Bengals get back on track with this victory.
No, to beat the Baltimore Ravens, you got to run the football. I mean, we've seen it time and time again for the last however many years. I mean, they're the running football team, and so it just kind of feels like to beat them, you gotta score quick and all this stuff. But that's not really the case. I mean, the Chiefs dominated them last year on the back of Isaiah Pacheco in the AFC Championship game, and it's been that way for a minute. I don't think that they're afraid of Chase Brown, Zach Moss combo here in Cincinnati. I think the Bengals can do some fun things, and kind of like Jamar Chase needs the football more. That's just at the end of the day. He needs to have more than 3 catches, 4 catches. He needs to be pushing these Malik Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb target numbers. And I know T. Higgins is awesome, but at a certain point, you just feed one of the 5 most talented players in the NFL and let the chips fall where they may. You mentioned it's a limited passing game. Does this not kind of feel like the one game a year where Lamar Jackson drops 320 yards and everyone goes, he can throw the football? That's what it feels like to me. It feels like maybe it's Zay Flowers has 100, maybe Rashad Bateman goes off the one game a year that he has. Maybe Likely is the guy. I think Andrews might be smoked, and that's scary, and that limits their ceiling, I think, quite a bit, in my opinion. I know Likely is my guy. He's a great, replacement if you're losing a Mark Andrews, but you're supposed to have them both, and I'm still curious at where that's going to go.
It's interesting, Tyson. I'm looking at EPA per rush, and I think maybe it's because they're doing it explosively. The Bengals are tied with the Ravens for the best EPA per rush in the league. And I don't know, it's because they don't run it very often. And so when they do, and they're getting chunk plays, but that was shocking to me. I'm like, God, because Zach Moss, it's not like he's plugging away, and Chase Brown, he's explosive every once in a while. But yeah, that was surprising.
If we let the Ravens play the Commanders and the Panthers, where are the Ravens sitting at the EPA per rush? I mean, they'd be one in the league by a ton.
Cincinnati has the 26th worst EPA per pass. That's not good. I know we're Eagles fans, so we pay attention to them closely, but I think everybody in the national sentiment kind of understands how bad that secondary is. Yeah, they're tied with the Eagles. It's not been the type of defense that we've seen out of my guy, now I'm forgetting his name, Lou Anarumo. Now, how about this, Tyson? Here's what's scary. Bengals are 31st in EPA per rush, 31st worst. I mean, that is scary, especially if you're coming and playing this Ravens team who wants to run the ball. Derrick Henry looks like he found the fountain of youth.
So, last thing on this game, since you mentioned it, Derrick Henry he clocked the exact same time in miles per hour as Xavier Worthy. So maybe shut up about the Underwear Olympics to everybody out there.
All right. Well, Tyson, that's going to do it for us today. Like, subscribe, and share the show. Let us know your thoughts on what you thought about the NFL and what you think about basically the first month being done. I mean, it's been an interesting season so far, so stay connected. We got you covered throughout the entire season. Smash that like button on the way out if you're watching on YouTube. Hit subscribe so you stay connected, and we'll be back with our college football reaction because we're coming off a huge weekend of college football. And we'll get you set for that one coming later in the week. So stay subscribed. We'll talk to y'all then. Peace.